temperature's gone up, we need to do it now. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how I manage my PCOS. PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome and affects rather a large proportion of the female population. People think that it's around 1 in 5. So it's kind of a common problem, and from what I've learned talking to a lot of my friends who have it, it's something that really the medical community don't know that much about because there has not been that much research done on it. The standard line, well, at least what I was told in my early 20s anyway, is, you know, come back when you can't have a child, which is not terribly useful when you've got problems maybe before you have children, or maybe you don't want children. So PCOS is not just a disease of infertility, it affects your whole life. And today I'm just going to be talking about some of the things that I've done to help with my symptoms. And I don't mean to make any recommendations for your personal circumstances, like I am not a doctor. This should be obvious, you're watching me on YouTube. Like seriously, don't take medical advice from people on YouTube. So I came off the pill in about 2014 because I was kind of concerned that my body was not doing what I wanted, and I wanted to have kids in the future, so I thought I would come off the pill and see what my body's doing without it. And as it turns out, it wasn't really doing a whole lot. I had no periods for about a year, over a year I think, which had been the case when I was originally diagnosed. That's how I got sent for referral. And so I just did a lot of research online. I knew that there was a link between PCOS and diabetes, and so a lot of resources were recommending a low-carb or ketogenic diet for the treatment of PCOS, or at least the improvement of symptoms, because I'm not sure whether it can really be considered treated. So it was the summer of 2015 that I thought I put on a load of weight, and I hadn't really had a reason to. You know, if anything, I was eating healthier. I was eating lots of quinoa, I was eating rice, I was eating loads of vegetables, and something just didn't seem right. So I thought I'd give it a try. I wasn't exactly overweight. I have what's called lean PCOS, but I was definitely heavier than I would have liked, and I just didn't really feel good. I felt very sluggish and bloated all the time. So it was about summer 2015 that I started a low-carb diet, and I started pretty much straight away. I didn't ease into it. I basically just stopped eating sugar, all refined carbohydrates, so rice, pasta, bread. So I cut all of that out. I even cut out the starchier vegetables. So I was actually counting carbs using MyFitnessPal, I think. And I was trying to keep it below 50 a day, which is actually pretty hard if you eat vegetables and fruit. I kind of went cold carb turkey, and I saw an immediate improvement. But surprisingly, I didn't go through this carb flu. I just felt better immediately. I had more energy, and I just started losing weight, and I hadn't really changed the amount I was eating. I just found myself less hungry, so perhaps I was eating less inadvertently. But before I went low carb, I would be hungry all the time, and I would need snacks. You get to 3 o'clock and you want a little pick-me-up, whereas I very quickly found that I didn't have that kind of crazy hunger, and I thought, maybe this wasn't a willpower problem after all. Maybe this was something to do with hormones. I basically saw benefits so quickly that I stuck to it, and in the space of about, July to November, I lost about 5 kilos, which is about 12 pounds, I think. And I didn't do any exercise, it fell off. And then obviously you see that it's working, so you're really motivated to keep going. So in that time I didn't really miss carbs at all, and I stuck to the diet pretty well, actually, until we started trying for a baby. So that really, it helped me lose weight, which studies have shown that even reducing your body weight by 5% or 10%, you can have a significant improvement in fertility. So I think I lost about 10% of my body weight at the time. It took about 4 or 5 months or so, and my periods returned. They weren't regular, they weren't fun, but they were there. And so I knew that I was going in the right direction. in terms of like the energy, the weight loss that had been so difficult before had become easy, I really found that changing my diet was the single most important thing that I did on the way to easing my symptoms. Now, it's kind of apparent that I have a lot of dates and a lot of figures. I can remember, you know, how much weight I lost and what dates that was, and I just have kind of a brain for these sort of numerical details. The reason that I can remember all of this is because I tracked, and I think that that is something that is also really important if you have PCOS, especially if you're trying to improve your fertility, but for everyone I think, because then you can see if there is an improvement and you can see what you've done. I'm a believer in science and the scientific method, and I would like to say, oh, doctors, you know, they really know what they're doing, but actually I don't think that they do know what they're doing with PCOS a lot of the time. So I think it's important if you can go to them and you can say, my last 3 cycles were this many days, and this many days. You know, the more data that you have, the better off you'll be, even if the doctor doesn't necessarily show an interest in it. So the things that I was tracking my cycles. I was using an app called Clue, which I do like, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for the fertility aspect of it. So I was using that beforehand, before we were trying for a baby. I know that I get what's known as PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder or something like that. Which is basically like I will have 1 or 2 days of severe depression right before my period starts, and then the next day it's completely gone. So now that I know that, and I'm not sitting there thinking, oh my god, I'm so depressed, am I going to be depressed for 3 months? Because I had, in my youth, I had periods, well, in my more youthful youth, I had periods of pretty extreme depression that lasted for months. So I think that once you know, oh, okay, I can look at my little app and I can see, yeah, maybe my period's coming. I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to wallow, and maybe tomorrow I'll feel better. And with me, certainly, that had been the case. It may not be the case for you, and if you are depressed, please seek help. The other reason why I would say it's important to track is because, you know, when you are diagnosed with something like PCOS, you get put in a category, right? So the doctors will say something like, well, people with PCOS can't have babies without drugs and all these kind of things. So if you track, you can actually get a hold of whether that's what your body's doing, because I was told by the doctors, for example, oh, you have a cycle of 60 days, you'll never get pregnant, right? And that was July 2016, and then a year later that same doctor was delivering my baby. Which I found funny at the time, but then again, I was on morphine. So you have to find out what actually is happening in your body. And the doctors they don't say anything about this. And I think it's so important. I mean, for example, I found out a lot of information that I had no idea about from a book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility, which I will link below. It's a fantastic book, and I was reading it and I was thinking, why didn't I get taught this when I was 13 years old? But one of the most important things I think I took away from that book was taking your temperature. I did not know that your temperature shifts by up to a degree during your cycle. So the first half of your cycle you'll be at a lower rate, and then the second half of your cycle you'll be at a higher rate until your period starts and your temperature goes down. And that difference means that you've ovulated. So if you're tracking your temperature, if you want to know if you are ovulating, if you're tracking your temperature every day, you might get a picture of it. It may be a little bit wonky, but you might be able to make some sense of it. So I would definitely recommend tracking your temperature if you're curious about whether you're even ovulating, because this whole thing about not getting pregnant without drugs, it's based on the fact that they assume, oh, if your cycle's over 35 days, you have bad eggs, which is also what I was told. I have a 16-month-old son now, so I think the egg was fine. But actually, because I was tracking, I know that the cycle beforehand, I didn't ovulate. The cycle before the one that I got pregnant, I didn't ovulate. So it's really helpful and for the fertility. But I think if you can get a sense on, if you're not trying for a baby, then it's still useful to track it, because you can get a sense of whether your body's working correctly. Well, correctly, I use that in a very loose word, like let's not start making judgments, but you know, I think the more information that we have, the better, right? Now this next thing that I'm going to talk about is something that, you know, I've actually not been really great at doing, and that is exercising. I have struggled with sort of mild chronic fatigue all my life. I wouldn't call it a chronic fatigue syndrome, but like I'm a tired person. I have never really had loads of energy, but I know that exercise is good for you. The problem was, back in the day, I was trying to use exercise to lose weight, and then I would exercise, I would get super hungry, I would eat a load of food, maybe some carbs, and I would get tired. So I never really got into a sustainable exercise routine, and when I was pregnant, I just felt crap pretty much for 9 months. You know, I'm over a year postpartum, and I finally even think about joining the gym, but I did join the gym, and do you know what? I feel so much better now. I know that it's not fun to exercise, but I think it is necessary. It helps with insulin resistance, so it will help your body's reaction to carbs. And more specifically, I think that doing weights rather than cardio is important for people with PCOS, because the more muscle that you have, the better your hormones are regulated, essentially. Because people like to think that fat and muscle just kind of sit there and they're just about how you look, but actually your body composition does have a big impact on hormones. I mean, fat is full of hormones, which is actually why when I first went low carb, and I was losing a load of fat, I found that I would have like super weird breakouts, and they would coincide with like little periods of weight loss. So as I was losing fat, I was like having a little bit of strange hormones while everything evened out. So yeah, I would say exercise, and it's specifically doing weights. Plus, lifting weights makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel like a badass, you know. You really feel like, yes, I am a 21st century woman now. Hear me roar. I would say just try and do something. Even if all you can do is some body weight exercise at home, there is so much on YouTube. You're on YouTube right now, maybe search for it, but no, please stay on this video and watch it. It'll help my view time. So you might be noticing a theme to this video, and that theme is kind of self-education. I was basically told nothing about PCOS when I was diagnosed, and I think that's probably the case for a lot of women. I was in my early 20s, I think 22 or 23 or something like that, and I was literally just told, oh, it affects your ability to have a baby, come back when you can't get pregnant. Here, have some different birth control. So I was put on anti-androgen birth control, which it's not meant for a long-term pill. It's meant to reduce your testosterone levels. So, but obviously that's not sort of combating the root cause, and I didn't get on with it. I think I was on it for about 10 months, but I mean, that's throwing some hormones at you in the hopes that eventually something will change. But if the problem, like diabetes, is to do with lifestyle or your diet, which I suspect it probably is, it's not really going to help you long term. So, you know, I think self-education is probably the most important thing, and there are so many resources online, there are so many books, and especially if you are trying to conceive, you know, you can't really rely on medical professionals to help that much. I mean, I was offered Clomid, which basically makes you ovulate. Now, I looked up Clomid, and discovered that there was a significantly high chance of conceiving twins, and or a significantly high chance of conceiving triplets. And I looked at the odds. I think it's something like 12% for twins and maybe 5% for triplets. To be perfectly honest, I'm a petite woman. I'm 5'4". There's no room for 2 babies in here, and there's no room for 3 babies. Like, that's not gonna happen. No. But you know, that was their solution. And I think I asked them at the time, like, I'm on this low carb diet. Is that not good? Is that not what I'm supposed to be doing? And it was very much like, that's not gonna make a difference. Well, that was July. We started properly trying in September. So that was one cycle. And I knew, because I tracked it, that I definitely ovulated. So September, I ovulated, didn't get pregnant. October, didn't ovulate, didn't get pregnant. November, ovulated, got pregnant. I'm not a medical miracle by any means. I just believe that the things that I was doing made a significant difference to my fertility. And I know that there are people who have been on low carb diets with PCOS and not conceived. And I, you know, I was incredibly lucky in that respect. But I do believe that part of my success in conceiving was to do with the fact that I was essentially gathering data, and I was thinking, right, I have to time the, you know, lovemaking. Anyone who's tried to have a baby will know that it gets to a point where it's not that romantic after all, especially if you have a condition where it's not regular and you're like, right, temperature's gone up, we need to do it now, this baby's not going to come. But the people that I talked to throughout my pregnancy, when I said I have PCOS, they were like, oh, what is it, spontaneous pregnancy? And spontaneous pregnancy is the Dutch translation of a natural pregnancy, like without drugs, basically. They call it spontaneous. And it was anything but spontaneous. But it's just seems to be common knowledge that women with PCOS can't have babies. And I want to assure you that that's not the case. And I'm not the only person who's gone keto and found their fertility improve. So this is turning into a bit of a like, go keto and have a baby lecture, which is not what I intended actually, because like, don't go keto and you definitely don't need to have a baby if you don't want to. But PCOS, like part of the whole problem that I've had with it was related to fertility. So it was kind of funny in the end when I'd spent so many years preparing, like I'd come off the pill, I'd researched, I was over a year on the low carb diet before we started trying. Like I had the data, I'd been doing it right, and then, you know, bam, baby. That's how it happens, by the way. It is possible to help your symptoms by doing things yourself and not necessarily relying on drugs. But if you feel like that you want to be on the pill and hormones can work, then definitely talk to your doctor about it. Doctors will put you on birth control because they want you to have periods, right? Because if you don't have periods, you have a greater risk of developing cancer, like ovarian cancer, because the cells are not being renewed often enough. So that's kind of fair enough. I do see where they're coming from with that. But the fact of the matter is that diet and exercise play a huge part in managing PCOS, so don't ignore that one. This is probably going to turn into kind of a long video now, so if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you like it, then give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, then I'm kind of surprised you made it this far. Well done. This must be a hate watch. If you like videos like this, comment and say, yes, please, I want more like this. Consider subscribing to my channel, because I think I have like 65 subscribers right now. And I'll see you next time. Bye.